Hey there, fellow D&D fans, and happy October to you. This is Sage of Sorcery, the Dungeon Master for Holy Rollerz, the new cleric-centered D&D live stream show on Twitch, premiering this Thursday, October 4th at 8:30 Mountain Standard Time. I am here with Ryan Van Adder, who plays Lachlan, the Bard Paladin of Sindel, the goddess of love, beauty, loyalty, and a bunch of other things, and possibly trolls. I don't know, whatever. I should know, I created her. But anyway, so we are here to talk with him a little bit about his character. How are you doing this evening, Ryan?
Doing great.
And would you tell me if you weren't?
I probably would. Yeah.
You probably would, even though this is an interview. I'm just curious. That's great, because that would really change the tone of the interview. So I'm glad we're not tangenting. But so the first thing that we want to do when we do these interviews is to ask, how did you start playing Dungeons and Dragons? Even though I already know the answer, and for some people watching it might be somewhat scandalous. How did you start playing Dungeons and Dragons?
Well, I've always been a fan of fantasy, and I loved playing RPG video games. When I was a missionary for my church, I met you and Matt, our DM, and we were missionaries in the same area for about 3 months. And in between our teaching and talking to people, we talked about our
Everything.
families and interests. And that's when I learned about D&D. Third edition had just come out, and so on our free day, we went to a bookstore and I bought the core rule books, and we kind of learned third edition together. And then after our missions, I started playing with my two brothers who were teenagers, and with Matt, with you, whenever I could get the chance. And it's been my favorite pastime ever since.
Awesome. Fantastic. And for those of you who might be wondering, we only played too late on our preparation day, one day, and we felt so bad we never did it again. So just in case you're one of the people in the know on that. So what is your favorite part of D&D, and when did you know that you were hooked? I mean, were you hooked when we started playing on our missions, or were you hooked after that?
Well, I was pretty well hooked before we had even begun the first adventure, right when we were making our first characters. Mm-hmm. The idea of making a character and then playing something completely fantastic and doing really cool things was really great. And then my favorite part is when the RP or the rolls, because you know the rolls can completely change the tone of the fight or the encounter or whatever, but when the RP or the rolls make for some memorable moment that we laugh about for years.
Yes. Yeah, that come up at parties or every time we get together, or carrots with high wisma, but we'll get to that later, I'm sure. So what good do you think comes from D&D? You introduced it to your brothers, so clearly it became a big hobby for you. What good do you think comes from it?
Well, I think that's where the biggest part of the biggest good is friendship. I love my brothers, and I love them one way or another. But D&D has been the catalyst for a friendship that has gone beyond just brothers who see each other. I mean, we still play at least monthly, and it was the first thing my youngest brother, when he got out of the Navy, he was back in Utah, and it was like, when are we playing? Yeah. Right off the bat. And so it's just one of those things that brings people together. As a side note to that, and as a former teacher, I also think it's awesome at building creativity, basic math skills, and vocabulary.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad that you put that plug in there, because as a former educator, well, I mean, we're both still in education, but as former classroom teachers, we understand the depth to which, hobbies and things can shape your vocabulary and your progression. So, I will echo that sentiment big time. So Holy Rollerz is a team of largely religious people that we're playing here, that are playing in our group, and fairly conservative. So why do you think it's important for conservative/religious people to have a voice in the D&D community, which seems like a largely progressive community?
Well, I think it's because conservatives need to know that D&D is not a liberal game or a conservative game. It's just an amazing game that is whatever. It's as diverse as the people who play it. It's unlike, say, a video game RPG where you're locked into certain plot lines and devices, and your character, you may be able to pick from some choices of what to say, but you're still locked into what the programmers had. And so a liberal programmer means you're playing a more liberal game, or a conservative programmer, you're playing a more conservative game. With D&D, the game is reflects the players at the table. And so it is for everybody.
Yeah.
Anybody, you know, crazy weird people can have a fun, crazy weird game, and
Yeah.
normal shy people can have
Crazy weird
a
game.
shy game. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that's been interesting as you and I have been playing over the years, is that we play against type frequently, because we who are more conservative, more rational, more kind of reserved people, we do enjoy playing the lunatic player character. So I don't know. I think it's funny. I think it's an outlet too sometimes for playing that kind of character who's maybe the kind that you would not necessarily make those choices in real life, but it's fun to watch a story unfold as your character makes those choices. So
Well,
um,
sometimes the villain is the most interesting character in a story.
yeah,
And so it's fun to play things where you aren't necessarily trying to be the villain, but being a little bit villainous sometimes can be kind of fun.
yeah, yeah, or very fun as the case may be. So interesting. All right, so I was going to ask you, what other fantasy or nerdy interests do you have? Shows, hobbies, comics. I mean, you already mentioned that you like RPGs, but what are your other nerdy interests?
Well, I play Heroes of the Storm, Blizzard's multiplayer online battle arena game, pretty much daily.
Cool.
And my favorite shows are sci-fi, fantasy, some crime drama. I subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, and I always it's loaded with fantasy or dystopia or adventure novels. Uh, I I have I have three boys that we play D&D together, so there's still some D&D there, but I see every movie that comes out if it's got a fantasy or a
Yeah.
superhero theme to it. So
Yeah. And if you were down here living in the mountain, you'd be seeing all of those movies with me and JT. But being that you are a little bit further up in Utah, that is not necessarily an option.
yeah,
Although we have seen fantasy movies before,
yeah.
we've cut time out of our D&D sessions to see fantasy movies before. So it depends on if it's a vampire. Neither one of us can stay away from the vampire movie very easily. So that's interesting. So why did you want to be a part of Holy Rollers? You are a very, very busy educator and professional in the administrative realm. Why did you want to be part of Holy Rollers, understanding that it would be a time commitment?
Well, a couple reasons. I mean, first of all, who wouldn't? I mean,
Mm,
if you once you figure out the the campaign is, and what we're doing there, and you and I played
yeah.
a campaign with a similar arc to it when in third edition,
Mm,
and it was great when playing. I played a druid and a dark elf holy warrior, and it was a lot of fun. So that's um, great. But I also think that this is something new. We've never played online like this,
yeah.
and so I like doing something new and we'll get to know. I'll get to know some new people and make some good connections there.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be new for us. So why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about that similar campaign that we did?
Well, let's see. We I played a druid, and third edition had some pretty fun features for the druid, and our it was an eclectic group where we got together to form a coalition of faiths, and the threat of evil was so great that churches with differing dogmas had to kind of put their differences aside and come together and form a third party organization to kind of unite against this evil.
Hmm.
And they they had an interesting way of selecting the
Hmm.
leader of the coalition. It was a free for all brawl, uh, and I managed to with my druid managed to win, but it was in large part due to all of us ganging up on all of the NPCs, everybody ganging up on your character,
Yeah.
and pretty much, making sure that no, she couldn't be the leader of the coalition.
Yeah, yeah, which was an interesting circumstance because I was playing a character who worshipped the goddess of black magic and who had the potential with the firepower that she had to be able to really do some heinous damage.
Oh yeah,
And not only heinous damage in the battlefield, but politically, if that
yeah,
character had become the head of the coalition. So it's going to be interesting to recreate a variation of that campaign. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be way fun. But
yeah.
yeah, it's good stuff. So, what do you think our group's strengths are going to be?
Well, we're all regular people, and I hope that viewers can see that by watching our group, that D&D is for everyone.
Yeah.
Uh, there's we're I wouldn't say that we're from all walks of life. We're not a very colorful group, but in terms of we're all from different backgrounds, and but we're just people who have jobs. We're middle-aged men and women who have families and have responsibilities, but yet we're able to get together and play this fun game. And I think that that's going to show people that this isn't just a bunch of like people who live in their mom's basements. The stereotype as the comic book owner from The Simpsons. It's not all a bunch of those kind of guys. It's just regular people.
The comic book guy from The Simpsons, who I still remember him holding that comic book right before Springfield got nuked, going, "Aquaman, you have no gills. You're from two different worlds. It will never work." And then this bomb goes off, and he goes, "I've wasted my life." It's just, and that guy is kind of the D&D stereotype, right? And he's not got social connections. He doesn't have necessarily a balanced or healthy lifestyle, and so I do think that's something that'll be good for us to get out there, right? That we're just regular people. We're just regular people, normal people with families and jobs and different living circumstances who are getting together to play this game that so many people love. What are you most excited about as we begin the campaign? What are you looking forward to the most?
Well, because I see that friendship being the most valuable part of it, that's what I'm most excited for. Is that I've played with you and I've played a little bit with Jeff, but I haven't played with JT and Jesse. And so playing with new people, it's fun, and getting to know people. You and I have played with Dan, your brother, and that Dan was just your brother to me, and now he's my friend because of D&D. And so it's one of those things that by going through this together, we'll make friends, and there'll be friendships that will last for years.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and I think that'll be good. Also, you and I neither one of us has ever played D&D with a girl, which I know may sound dumb to our viewers, but your selection for who you can have at the gaming table isn't always what you'd pick, right? It's whoever is closest, or in our case, in the case of you and me, it's whoever I think I can trust enough to bring into this world, right? Because you're like, hey, do you want to come into my basement and pretend to be a different person and roll dice in a fantasy? Like that doesn't go over with everybody, depending. I don't know at your next principals meeting if you want to throw that onto the table and drop the dice and see who picks it up. But I'm willing to bet you're going to skip that. So, okay, so our time is pretty much up here. We're over our 10 minutes. So as we close, would you tell us your favorite D&D anecdote? Whether it's funny, scary, emotional, just your favorite D&D story or one that comes to mind.
From having played?
Yeah.
I think one that comes to mind is, it's going to go back to a crazy witch that is one of my all-time favorite characters to play, a witch who is an amnesiac. And she has an imp familiar that she orders around, and when he disobeys, she punishes him by making him do goodly things. And the idea of her making this imp take the form of a halfling and serve orphans at a soup kitchen in a dress with a smile on his face is just hilarious to me. Yeah. So I love playing the crazy witch who gets to abuse her familiar.
Her familiar, right? Yeah, she's definitely a fantastic character, which is actually one of the things that's unique. You and I are not afraid to play female characters, which for a lot of men, I think, is something that it like intimidates and frightens them. But I feel like we're a little bit more maybe secure in our masculinity. It just doesn't bother me. But when there are no women in the game, it doesn't feel like a real world. It's like this tribe of manazons or something. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. So that's interesting, and while you're playing an interesting character in Lachlan, it's a very well-rounded experience, I think. So, well, great. Is there anything else you wanted the viewers to know before we sign off here?
Just keep playing.
Just keep playing. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. All right, so we will see those of you who are watching. We will see you Thursday, hopefully, on the Sage of Sorcery Twitch channel. If you want, you can follow me. I am at Sage of Sorcery 1, and they can follow you where?
At Rollerz.
At Rollerz. Okay.
Roller, sorry.
Roller. Yeah, one roller. So
One roller.
yeah, and so until Thursday when we have our premiere, this is Sage of Sorcery and Ryan Van Etter saying there are more of us than there are of them. Have a good night.